Ready? Oh, I've got to see it. No. I've been talking to my friend Anna, who is in the same situation as me. She's on her own, living on her own, and so we talk to each other quite a lot. And she said to me one day, tell me about some happy holidays you've had. She said her daughter's got a book with lots of photographs in it, and it's called a happy book. And so we all have happy memories. But the most wonderful holiday I ever had, I was 55 years old. And it was a holiday in America, but I didn't want to go. I was frightened of flying in an aeroplane. I'd never been in an aeroplane before. So I went to see my doctor, who was Dr. Cat in those days, and she said to me, go, I'll give you a couple of tablets, one to take on the way and one to take on the way back. And so I went, because my husband said to me, if I didn't go, he wouldn't go either. And so we went. And so we got on this aeroplane at Gatwick. I looked around and I thought, that aeroplane will never get off the ground. It was so big, and I couldn't believe that it would ever get off the ground. But it did. I didn't know in those days, I don't know much now, about whatever it's called. Anyway, it did, and it flew up. I'd taken my tablet, and so I was very comfortable in the aeroplane, and they were so wonderful to me. And so we went all the way to America, and we arrived in America safely, and Andy's friend John met us at the airport, and he took us all sorts of places. We stayed in a place called Raleigh. I don't know why it was called Raleigh, but that was the name of the place, and it was in South Carolina, and it was so hot. We couldn't go down to the beach in the daytime because it was too hot. Anyway, one day we got up early, as we had to, and he said, I'm going to take you somewhere today. And he took us on a long journey. I can't remember how far it was, but when we were sitting in the car, I was watching the signposts. I was sitting in the back of the car with his wife Jean and watching what was going on. And suddenly I heard this terrific noise. And I said to John, it was a place called Buffalo. What a funny name for a place. I said to John, what's that noise? And he said, it's Niagara Falls. And I couldn't believe it. And so we went to Niagara Falls. Well, I shall never forget the sight of Niagara Falls. All the little tiny rainbows springing up everywhere because of the water. But then, in the afternoon, I went for a little walk along the promenade. And Andy and John went in the different direction because they wanted a chat. I went down this big promenade, quite a little way, I expect half a mile, and there was a little stream running down, very, very quiet, running down. And as I got a little way up the promenade, I saw a big notice on the other side, and it said, the point of no return. And I thought to myself, well, you wouldn't believe it because it looked so quiet. Anyway, I could hear the noise of Niagara. Terrific noise it was. But as well, I could hear the noise of that little tiny stream going gently down to the Niagara. And I thought to myself, in the midst of all the noise and bustle, we can still hear a still small voice. Do you remember Elijah when he went through that wonderful experience at Carmel, gained the victory for God, and then he was frightened? Mind you, he had good reason to be frightened, didn't he? Because he had Jezebel after him, and she was going to knock him off, and Ahab too. And so he went into a little cave and he stayed in there. And he prayed and he said, I'm the only one that's left. And God said to him, don't you believe that, Elijah? There are a lot of people who still love my name. And while he was in that cave, he saw a great big wind come in, a huge wind. And he thought to himself, well, whatever's that? Anyway, it says in the Bible that God wasn't in the mighty wind. And then he heard a terrific earthquake. And it says, but God wasn't in the earthquake. And then he heard a still small voice. And God was in the still small voice. And I felt that when I was at Niagara, when I heard that little stream going along, that in spite of all the noise and problems in the world, God is still in the still small voice. So I thought to myself, I'm on my own, as a lot of you are. A lot of you are on your own, aren't you? And you don't hear too many voices. Thank goodness for the phone, though. But we can sit and listen and hear his still small voice speaking to her. I told you I didn't want to go on that holiday, didn't I, before? But before we went, we read a little bit from the book of Nahum. Do you know the book of Nahum? I don't expect you've read it for a long time. But it's one of the minor prophets. And it said in that first chapter of Nahum, the clouds are the dust of his feet. So he goes in front of us, doesn't he? Whatever the clouds there are, God is there before us. And the clouds are the dust of his feet. And we will have to prove that in the days that to come. So have you got a happy book? I think a happy book is good memories of happy days that have gone by. I can remember after the Second World War, and I must have been about 13 years old, we all went down to Trowbridge Park and we rejoiced because the war was over. But I think we almost forgot, I don't think we did, all the people that had died to make that possible for us. And so we couldn't be as happy as perhaps we hoped to be, but we were happy because the war was over. And that'll happen to us too. We're in this war at the moment, aren't we? And being shut in. But one day we'll be able to say, happy days are here again. And please God, it won't be too long. Bye.